Hey everyone, it's lesson 8.3 and our question today is how do we use our knowledge of mathematical concepts to solve algebraic equations? Now hopefully by that question you're going to understand or you could infer or draw a conclusion that we are going to be studying and working with solving equations today. So let's get right to it. Hopefully my goal is to get 9 equations on this first video, so cross your fingers and hope I don't write too large. Okay, first one we're going to do is we're going to have 61 minus p is equal to 37. Okay, now boys and girls, when you think about this, you want to think of the opposite. Okay, when you think of minus, you want to think of the opposite, because what you want to do is you want to get all your variables on one side and all your numbers on the other side. Now because this is a minus and we don't really deal well with the minus world right now, what we're going to do is to simplify this, we're going to add plus p to both sides, and what we're going to get is 61 is equal to 37p. Oh my goodness, my stylus is not working it out right now. Plus p. Okay? And now we're going to get rid of that 37. We're going to subtract 37. Subtract whatever to one side, and do to the other side. Minus 37. And then this is 1. That's 5. That's going to be 24 is equal to p. So if I were to plug in 24 here, 61 minus 24, I would get 37. Okay, now I want you to notice how I did that. Because this is negative, we want it to be positive, so we added the p, and then we subtracted 37 from this side. Alright, let's look at another problem here. 48 is equal to 16 delta, 16d. Okay, now again, we want to isolate the variable and get it so the variable's on one side. Remember, the variable is the letter and the numbers are on the other side. So remember, we want to think about the opposite function, the opposite algorithm. Here we subtracted, and the opposite of subtract, we add, and then we subtracted to get 24 equals p. What's the opposite of multiplying by 16? Well, hopefully, boys and girls, you realize the opposite of multiplying by 16 is to divide by 16. And whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I do to the other. So now I have 16 divided by 16 is 1, and what I'm left with is d, and then I have 48 less 16. 48 divided by 16, I'm going to get 3. Okay? So that's how we do division. Now let's look at another one here. We've got 143 is equal to 250 minus w. Again, boys and girls, we have that minus w here, like we had that minus p. So we want to deal with a positive variable and a positive number. So what we're going to do is we're going to add w to both sides, plus w. So what I'm going to have is 143 plus w is equal to 250. And then I'm going to subtract 143, because now that's going to cancel out. I'm subtract 143 from that, and I'm going to get w is equal to, I think, 107. Okay? Again, I try and get my variables on one side, my numbers on the other, and because we're dealing with negative, I want to bring it over to the positive side, just because we don't really understand negatives very well. All right, so that's the first one. Let's look at the next set. I've got 15 minus 7 less 32 divided by 8. Okay? Now, boys and girls, hopefully you remember from order of operations that we're going to do what's in the parentheses first. What's in the parentheses here? I've got 15 minus 7 is 8, less 32 divided by 8 is 4, 8 less 4 is going to give me 4. Again, I solve the parentheses first. That's my first chunk. And then I have those two numbers, and I solve it. Next problem. 17 plus 10 divided by 11 minus 8. And I have a parenthetical here, parentheses, and parentheses here. So I'm going to do what's in the parentheses first. 17 plus 10 is going to give me 27. And I'm going to divide that by 11 less 8 is 3. 27 divided by 3 is going to be 9. Okay, one more problem here. I think we have enough room. 42 in parentheses, 42 divided by 7 times 23 less 18. Okay, now these are in parentheses here. Parentheses, parentheses. So I'm going to do the parentheses first. Okay, so let's go. 42 divided by 7 is 6. And I'm going to multiply that by 23 less 18. That's going to be 5. 6 times 5 is going to give me 30. And then let's look at our next row here. We've got 8 divided by x plus 7 is equal to 1. Okay, so here when we think about this, we have to figure out what is in this parenthetical. So if I take 8 and divide it by something to get 1, 8 divided by what is 1? Well, hopefully you know that 8 divided by 8 is 1. So we have to figure out how to get this parentheses here to equal 8. Because if I take 8 and divide it by 8, I'm going to get 1. So to get that, what does x have to be? Well, for this to be 8, x has to equal 1. 8 divided by 8 is 1. All right, let's look at our next problem here. 3f minus 1 is equal to 8. Okay, now one thing, boys and girls, that will help us is that when we see a coefficient, which is this number here, next to a variable, we automatically think that this is multiplied together. So 3 times f less 1 is 8. Now, to make this problem a little easier, what we're going to do is we're going to try and get all our numbers on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 because that's the opposite of subtract 1, and they are going to cancel each other out. Whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I do on the other. So now I have 3f is equal to 9. Now the next step is I'm going to divide by 3 because that's the opposite of multiply by 3. Divide by 3. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and I'm just left with f. 9 divided by 3 is going to be 3. So f equals 3. So if I go 3 times 3 minus 1, 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. Everything works out. All right, final problem here. We're going to have parenthetical here. Let me erase this just so we got a little bit more space here. We've got the parenthetical G. Oops, that's not a G. Well, it is kind of a G, but it's a horrible G. We'll go with the capital G divided by 5 plus 1 is equal to 2. Again, this one we want to let's get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. So we're gonna, what's the opposite of plus 1? Subtract 1. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So then I have G divided by 5 is equal to 1. Now, G divided by 5, what's the opposite of divide by 5? Times 5. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. These two are going to cancel each other out. So then I'm going to have G equal to 5. Now if I plug 5 in here, 5 divided by 5 is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Okay, so that was a very long video. I apologize, but I wanted to get through all of those problems. Hopefully all of them made sense. If not, check with Mr. Winkleman with any of them that didn't make sense. Okay,